you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K,
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur.
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro on this Wednesday, October 30th. It is the Sick Podcast. Thank you for watching on YouTube, Facebook, and on Twitter. The Sick Podcast brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group, a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different, as well as Playground. Step into the world-renowned poker experience at Playground, where free food and drinks, a cash game tables, a bad beat jackpot, weekly promotions, daily tournaments, unmatched customer service await you. Why play anywhere else? Just minutes from downtown Montreal, across the Mercier Bridge. Playground, and also brought to you in part by Tibi. They launched their new Ultra Lager, refreshing, thirst-quenching beer, perfect for cool fall days. Only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, 4% ABV per can. Available in a pack of 6 and 12 in grocery stores all around the province of Quebec. Ultra light and ultra refreshing. Last night wasn't a great night, but it was a great night. It wasn't a great night for the Montreal Canadiens, who lost in front of their fans by a score of 8-2. Not 3-2, not 4-2, not 5-2, not 6-2, not 7-2, but 8-2. And they didn't play the Islanders of the 80s. They didn't play the Oilers of the 80s. They didn't play versus, other great teams of the past. They played versus the Seattle Kraken, with all due respect to the Seattle Kraken, of course. But it was a great night for the Sick Podcast, because last night it was a pleasure to take our show on the road at Sir Winston Churchill Pub on Crescent Street in downtown Montreal. And I had a round table. I had a post-game show last night right after the game, and I had Chris Nyland on one side, and I had Maxime Lapierre on the other side, two former Montreal Canadiens, guys that played with a lot of energy, a lot of guts, and a lot of heart. And there's a lot of stuff that came from the heart last night and during that post-game edition of the Sick Podcast. And there was a great crowd. A lot of you came out and watched the game with me. It was so amazing to meet so many new people and put faces to a name. And we had a great time. And you stuck around for the podcast after the game. And wow, what a fantastic night. It's something that we plan on doing a lot more often going forward. I know it was a lot of fun for me when Craig Button was in town several weeks ago for his niece's wedding. And we met up. I went to pick him up at the hotel, and then we went over to Souvlaki Authentique on in Lachine, of course, on Notre Dame. And we were so well treated, of course, by the owner, the staff, and the franchisees and all that stuff. It was amazing. Craig's at a distance today, but I'm sure it's going to be equally amazing. He's TSN hockey analyst and their director of scouting. Craig Button, how are you?
I'm great. That time we spent together breaking bread, so to speak, breaking pita.
Yeah.
At Slovakia Authentique. Costa was so great to us, as was everybody there. But there was a few nights back in my youth when I was at Sir Winston Churchill's pub. So, I wouldn't hesitate to join you there either, Tony.
That's funny, because Chris Nyland mentioned to me yesterday that it was his first time back since the 80s. And when he played for the Canadiens, he mentioned that it was one of his go-to establishments, put it that way. So he was familiar with the place, but hadn't been since the 80s. And it was real cool to podcast with Chris Nyland and Maxime Lapierre yesterday, because I think they're two real ones. Craig, I don't have to tell you what's going on here in Montreal. You could just imagine. But the Canadiens have played 10 games. Their record is 4-5-1, and that's respectable, all things considering. The injury to Liney, and he hasn't played a game. The fact that Kirby Dach obviously is still trying to get back into game shape and everything after taking the year off last year. Injury to Goalie, injury to different players missing out of the lineup. The record is respectable. What's a lot less respectable are the fact that they gave up 6 in Boston, and in 3 of their last 4 games at home, their last 3 losses at home, they gave up 6 versus the Penguins, 7 versus the Rangers, and last night 8 versus the Seattle Kraken. Their defensive stats and their team stats are absolutely atrocious, and we're going to get to them a little bit later. But there's a little bit of a firestorm right now in Montreal. I mean, everyone's safe and everything's good, but there's a way to lose, and I'm not so sure that this is the way to do it, Craig.
Well, I think you certainly know that when you lose in the manner that the Montreal Canadiens have lost in, and it hasn't been pretty. In fact, if it was even, a little bit ugly, it would be okay, but it's been downright ugly. And we talk about the Montreal Canadiens at the outset of this year and the hope and the optimism. And, when you talk about competing, and it's interesting because Costa from Slovakia Authentique talked about, like, you got to be careful how you use words in certain markets. When you talk about, being competitive in Montreal, it means, like, okay, are we close to competing for a Stanley Cup again? His words, right? So there's different meanings depending on what market you're in. And the market in Montreal is one that has shown a tremendous amount of patience. Jeff Bolson talked about the fact that, when they were going down this path, he wasn't really so sure about it, but hearing from the fans, really encouraged. We all talk about the Montreal Canadiens and the path they're on, their prospect pool and everything. Well, now when you play the way you have and you get the results that you have in the manner that you have, well, there's going to be different comments from the fan base. And the fan base isn't now talking about, we shouldn't have rebuilt or this isn't where we're at. They're talking about, okay, this team doesn't look very functional in terms of defensive play. In fact, it looks highly dysfunctional from a point of defensive play. And so that's fair criticism. That is something now with a very knowledgeable fan base that if you're the Montreal Canadiens, you might not like it. Nobody necessarily likes the critical feedback. But the bottom line is anything offside?
Craig, no, I don't think anything is on offside. I want to talk to you about Samuel Montembeault. We talked about how much they're struggling defensively, but they say the goalie is the last line of defense, right? Montembeault's first game of the season was one of the best goalie performances I've seen from a Canadiens goalie in quite some time. All right. We know it's a big year for him. He wants to represent Canada at the Four Nations Cup. We know that there's a nice opportunity there because there's not exactly a Patrick Waugh or a Roberto Luongo or a Marty Brodeur or a Marc-Andre Fleury in his prime right now. The competition is average, with all due respect to everyone who's in that pool. But Montembeault's save percentage of .891 is 20th in the league, and his goals against average of 3.67 is 52nd in the league. If you had to put it on one more than the other, would you say it's more Montembeault or more the Canadiens' inability to defend?
Well, a .891 save percentage based on defensive metrics that are amongst the worst in the league, I'm going to say should be celebrated. That's what I think. So listen, Sam Montembeault had an awful game on Tuesday versus Seattle. There's no getting around it. Sam Montembeault knows it. Everybody knows it.
Yeah.
But when we look at the defensive aspect of the Montreal Canadiens, it's right near the bottom of the league. And when you're right near the bottom of the league in all the critical areas of defense, ultimately what ends up, so all you're now asking is your goaltender to be not only the last line of defense, to be your safety net and a saving grace. All puns intended.
Yeah. Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell anyone that Montembeault is not to blame because obviously he's playing awful. The Canadiens actually, in a lot of games, have had a higher expected goals ratio than their opponent, but yet they give up several goals. And Montembeault has given up his share of really bad goals too. I say this, though. If you don't either A, have the talent, and or B, don't have the depth, and or C, have in front of you a goaltender whose confidence is fragile, to say the least, you're not supposed to play wide open in front of them. You're supposed to protect them. You're supposed to insulate them. You're not doing that.
Well, I mean, good defensive play. I don't care who your goaltender is. You know, good defensive play is a team function. And again, when you start to look at some of the what I would call really significant factors in terms of how they're playing and what it means, it's not pretty at all. There's nothing pretty about it from their defensive point of view. Even if we go back to Tuesday night and we look at some of the goals that were scored, right from the slot, giveaways, poor coverage. Okay, we're asking Samuel Montembeault to clean that up a little bit and to make those saves. Game 1 against the Toronto Maple Leafs, they probably would have lost 5 or 6-1 if it wasn't for Samuel Montembeault. But he became significant in that opening season victory. The Montreal Canadiens, and you've heard me say this, until they improve in significant areas, and that's goal scoring, that's goals against, they're not going to move up in the standings. I mean, and the 4-5-1 record, there's been some good there, so you don't want to just dismiss the good. But with respect to how you're going to play, that becomes now, when things aren't going well, you want to hang your hat on some part of the strength of your group. And the defense is not part of that strength. So when it breaks down massively. And it causes big problems. 7 against the Rangers, 6 versus the Bruins, 8 versus the Kraken. Those are the breakdowns that happen. And you can't just expect your goaltender to clean it up at every turn. Again, .891 save percentage with the defensive metrics that the Montreal Canadiens have performed to this year. I would say that's not too bad.
I want to talk about a decision that Marty St. Louis took vis-a-vis Kirby Dach. We know that, he struggled in the first, I think, 7 games of the season. I think he had one good period in Boston, which I think was the first period. Other than that, it was difficult for him, and he wasn't producing, and he was a big minus, and he didn't have, points. And Marty St. Louis in that game versus the Rangers decided, you know what? I'm going to put Kirby Dach to play right wing with Suzuki and Caulfield. And he looked a lot more comfortable on the wing. He had some scoring chances. He was around the net. He looked relieved of not having that responsibility of having to play that more of a 200-foot game, even though wingers can be asked to play it too when they do. And then he has that game versus the St. Louis Blues on the weekend. His second game on the wing, he picks up a goal and an assist, and it's his best game of the season thus far. It's not even close. The next night, he's in Philadelphia, and they win again. And he picks up an assist on the first goal of the hockey game, a goal by Suzuki, where he had really fast hands, really quick hands, and he sets up Suzuki in close, and he scores. Juraj Slafkovsky during this time was out with an injury. And yesterday at practice, Marty St. Louis says, Slafkovsky's ready to get back in the lineup. I'm going to put him on a line with Newhook and Armia. I think the way we're playing now, it'll suit him more. And I want him to be the guy who drives the line. And I want him to be the guy that gets the line going. But he says, at the same time, he's going to be back on the first line in no time. So they have that game last night. They're down 4-1 after the first period. And in the second period, Slafkovsky's back up on the first line. And Kirby Dach is back down with Newhook and Armia. My question to you is, when the coach comes out and says, I'm going to put him on the second line, but it's a matter of time he's going back on the first line, And Dach, who was on the second line, was put on the first line to get him going, and he was going. Should he have said that? Because when he said it, I said, yeah, but if I'm Dach, if I'm more comfortable at the wing, geez, he's already telling me I'm going back to the second line. And if I'm Slafkowski, well, you know, I don't really have to play my best game. He's telling me that I'm going to be back on the first line eventually anyway. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts on that, Tony, is that we're looking at Tuesday's game. It got away from the Montreal Canadiens relatively quickly, and there just wasn't going to be a recovery from that. So now Marty's looking at it and going, okay, what can I do? You know, I know Kirby's played well, but our team here just hasn't started well. We're behind. So now you start to experiment a little bit. So I think to look at Tuesday night's game and say that, you know, he was too quick or not, I think that becomes part and parcel when your team is getting beat like that to try to do some different things. I think your players expect it. I think you're trying to see something that can spark. More than that, you're just trying to see, okay, Kirby Dach had some really good games, you know, moving up. And now, okay, does he have that mojo if we put him back there and Uri coming back into the lineup? And listen, Uri and Nick and Cole were an excellent line, you know, over the course from the time they've been put together. So I wouldn't read too much into it at this point in time. Again, like objective Met trying to get Kirby going, and Kirby had some real strong games. And then, you know, the game gets away from Montreal, and I think from a coaching point of view, you're just trying to find some kind of spark for your team, and trying to see, okay, maybe this could work. And if there's ever a time to experiment, it's at times when you have a big lead or you're behind by a lot in a game. And I think that's what Marty was doing on Tuesday.
Yeah, well, Dach had taken one step forward, but only ended up take 2 steps back yesterday, because once again, back on the second line yesterday, he finished the night -3. He really struggled. There was one play where the Canadiens had a defensive zone faceoff. Newhook took it versus Shane Wright. Shane Wright ends up winning the draw, and Kirby Dach is confused as to which man he has to pick up. And it looks like he's skating towards the point man at one point, only to turn back. Mailloux ends up skating towards that point man, and Brandon Montour ends up behind Kirby Dach, tries to deke Caden Primo, who makes a stop, and he stuffs home the rebound. So he looked a little bit lost. I want to bring something up. That the only reason why I want to bring something up is Eric Oziel, who's a huge sports fan, and he's a prominent actor here in the province of Quebec. He took part in that TV series Lancez Compte, as well as so many great movies. He's a collaborator on my show, and he reminded me of something that happened. Was it a couple of weeks ago when the Canadiens were in New York on a Saturday night? It was actually Saturday, October 19th, less than a couple of weeks ago. And he brought something up. I don't know if you had a chance to see this, but I'm going to show it to you. It's a member of the media asking Cole Caulfield a question about his shots going in this year now that he's fully recovered from the shoulder injury. Listen carefully.
Do you feel more comfortable shooting the puck compared to last year? Because it seems like those shots from small angles are getting in more than last year.
No. No. It's a crazy question.
No, it's fine. But because I know those shoulder surgeries might.
Have you had one?
No, but
okay. Yeah.
Okay.
It was, if you saw the actual images and we played the audio, to be honest, without making a big deal out of it, it was a little bit uncomfortable, though. First, your thoughts on the question?
Yeah, I think the question is one, certainly, Cole. I mean, there was a lot of questions on a 28 goal scorer last year that was top 10 in shots on goal. He had lots of good slot shots on goal. The shooting percentage went down. I mean, could the shoulder be a little bit stronger this year? I mean, Cole is 23 years old. He's a little bit older. He's a little bit more physically mature. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the question. And certainly, one that you're, as a reporter, you're trying to just ask the player, hey, how do you feel about that?
Yeah.
Cole, I don't know the context of what led into it, or, when Cole asked about, have you ever had a shoulder surgery or anything? Bottom line is Cole Caulfield is a goal scorer. And when the puck is going in, and where it didn't go in last year, you start to say, okay, maybe it was a result of just strengthening the shoulder. But,
yeah,
I think that I think the smile on Cole's face tells you that the pucks are going in.
Yeah.
And that he's feeling good about everything in his game, as he should be.
And Cole had a great game that night in New York versus the Islanders. He had scored a couple of goals. They were down by a score of 3-2. He scored his second of the game, I think, with about 2 minutes and 10 seconds left in regulation to tie it. They end up going to a shootout, and they end up losing. And so that happens. Fast forward a couple of days later, the Canadiens lose by a score of 7-2 to the New York Rangers. And for the next 3 days that the Canadiens had a game 4 days later, but for the next 3 days, obviously, there was a lot of criticism going around, some of which came from yours truly and some other members of the media. And Marty St. Louis was also part of that criticism and some of his decisions. So he was asked about, the market and facing criticism when you're off for several days. One of the things that happens, though, is that you start to hear more and more of the criticism. How do you deal with it? Let's hear from Marty St. Louis. We have that? No, we don't have it. Okay, hold on a second. I'm going to try and get it. Shane has told me that we don't have it, so I'm just going to try and bring it up here. 1 second. And Shane, okay, so I've just sent it over to Shane, and Shane's going to tell me when we're able to get it. All right. Okay. So in the meantime, I'll wait for it. Okay. So anyway, long story short, there we go. Just sent it over. Marty St. Louis, and we'll get to the clip in a second, Craig. So he was asked about, how do you deal with the criticism? And he said something to the effect of, and I think you've already heard it maybe because it's made its rounds on social media. And he said, criticism, like, why would I take criticism from someone I would never go to advice for? And then he said, I was walking to the Bell Center because I had to go to work. A couple of people stopped me and told me, don't listen to them. And it's okay because I don't watch it. I don't listen anyway. Mind you, they all do. And then he said, but it's okay because you know what? If anything, I should be thankful because that stuff fuels me, and it did as a player, and I want to prove people wrong. So we'll probably get the clip in about a second or two. Once again, he has it, he says. Let's play it.
Listen to a critic from somebody I would never go for advice for. Okay? So just to start there. But I know what you're saying, and it's funny because yesterday I was walking to the Bell Center going to work, and like I say, I don't listen, but there's a couple fans that stopped me and they said, hey, don't listen to them. Keep working. So I realized, oh, okay, this is happening, right? It's part of the market, but like, it's not going to change what I do, and it's not going to make me upset. But if it does one thing, is I'm almost thankful, because I usually overcome the obstacles and the people that doubt, and it fuels me.
There you go. We can definitely understand that. It fueled him his entire career. But Craig, one of the things that sometimes former great players have a hard time with when they end up becoming coaches is that they still think like a player at times. Is it possible that with that answer, there's some of that there? Yes or no?
Listen, one of the things that Marty St. Louis has demonstrated throughout his career as a player and now as a coach is self-belief. You need self-belief. There is no way that if Marty didn't have self-belief, that he would have taken the job coming from the background that he came from to go into a huge hockey market.
Yeah,
Marty knew it. So you need self-belief. There's nothing negative about having self-belief, and understanding it, and understand too that quote was a quote from that other coaches have said previously. So
yes.
that's not a new original quote. That's a quote that's been used in different areas. So,
and athletes too, like Aaron Rodgers.
yeah, so that's okay. I mean, I get it, and certainly, Marty realizes where he's at, and Marty should have self-belief. But at the same time, you also have to have self-awareness. And self-awareness is also, okay, what do I need to be a little bit better in? What do I need to improve on? I've never doubted that Marty St. Louis was always going to work to be better. He demonstrated that as a player. I think he's demonstrated that right now as a coach. But what's amazing is, okay, so you lose a couple of games, and then you go and you play 2 really good games and you win. Now you come back on a Tuesday night and it's not a very good game. Right now it's a little bit of a roller coaster for the Montreal Canadiens. And what's inevitable in a great hockey market with great passionate, and I will add knowledgeable fans and knowledgeable media, is that, now you're going to get the other side of it. How you navigate it, how you deal with it. I don't think anybody's doubting Marty St. Louis, and he shouldn't doubt himself. But, and this is the big but here, successful people find solutions to their problems. The Montreal Canadiens have problems. So it's now up to Marty to find solutions. And that's as simple as that. And if you find solutions, you'll be celebrated for it. And if you're not finding solutions, you'll be questioned. That's part and parcel of being a head coach in the National Hockey League. It's even more of a spotlight when you're in Montreal.
So Marty St. Louis says that. The clip goes all over social media. It goes viral. Cole Caulfield likes it. Uri Slafkovsky likes it. They like the fact that Marty's giving a shot back, saying, why do I listen to advice from people that why would I take criticism from people I would never go to advice for? And last night after the game, Uri Slafkovsky is asked about, the loss and what happened and finding solutions. And listen to Slafkovsky.
Why you're unable to kind of maintain momentum sometimes?
No, but I'm sure you guys will figure it out and will write about it. What's wrong? But right now the wrong thing is that we got scored on, or they scored eight times on us, and we have to figure out that. Doesn't matter if we won 2 last games if something like this happens.
All right, so Slafkovsky ends it saying we got to find the solution. We obviously gave up 8 goals. But he says, we don't know right now, but, I'm sure that you guys will figure it out, you in the media, and you guys will write about it and stuff like that. He's given a shot back right away. He's a young player. He's going to say some things where he might put his foot in his mouth. He's entitled to say everything he said. But it almost seems like there's starting to become a divide between media and I don't know. Eric was talking to me about this today, and he's like, this could kind of be like a built-in excuse after, I don't know. Do you see anything concerning about this? I mean, this has been all in the last 10 days, these audio clips.
Well, what I would say about Uri is that's a snarky response. I'm sure you guys will tell us what's wrong. He's asked the question. Okay. I mean, listening to the question, it didn't feel like he was challenged or, backed up with the question. It didn't feel like that to me. I can't put myself in his shoes at that point in time. But what you never want to get into is a war of words with the people that buy their ink by the gallon. And that's the media. Okay. So people will say, use terms like, oh, the media are a necessary evil. Well, I know this is that when people feel that the media can help them, they're not hesitant to reach out to them. It's the same thing that goes back. Positive affirmation, positive critical analysis, negative critical analysis. Everybody loves the positive. And people, cringe at times about the negative. I'm going to go back to self-awareness. Okay. what are you trying to accomplish there? You're a young player, and your eye's going to mature, and there's going to be a maturity around it. Here's my question, and here's my biggest question.
Mm-hmm.
Who is Uri looking up to on this team from a leadership, mature point of view that says, that's not the way I should be handling things? And who's telling them behind closed doors, that's not the way to handle things? Because when you start to get into this, there is the potential for a divide to happen, and then the friction becomes harder, and you're going to be dealing with the media every single day. Part of dealing with the media is understanding, okay, they have a job to do. I said this, as long as you're not personal, as long as you don't get into an attack, as long as your questions are fair, then you as an athlete or a coach or a manager, best be prepared to answer them in a very civil way. So what I would say is that was a sign to me that Uri, was an immature answer to what I thought was a fair question. Now that's me.
Yeah, you asked the question. I'm going to answer it now. Before I talk to you about Betway, a leading global online betting and gaming brand, follow your gut instinct. Go with Betway. Go on Betway.com or scan the QR code to join the action. Must be 18 years old and play responsibly. The Sick Podcast is also brought to you by Secure Payment with a K. Fall's the perfect time to start a new job. Unlock your potential with Secure Payment. Experts. Secure is the highest paying English-speaking call center in the Montreal area. The job is English only, no French required, which we know is next to impossible to find here in Montreal. They're always growing the team, and with two great locations, downtown Montreal and the West Island, they offer a fun and unique culture with great earning potential, plus no experience necessary. 2 ways to apply. Either head over to Life@Secure with a K on Instagram and tap apply now, or text apply now with your name and phone number to 514-909-8344. Come work at Secure. That's Secure with a K. Apply today, start tomorrow. You said, who is Uri looking up to? I'm going to give you an answer, and I'll because he's a forward, I'll take a look at another forward. Okay, we'll do it that way, because there's a couple of defensemen that he can look up to on the team. One is Mike Matheson, the other one is David Savard, for example. Uri should look up to a guy like Brendan Gallagher, who has had a long career in the National Hockey League, who has been asked plenty of questions by the media, who has always conducted himself with class, who's always been available, who's always showed up. I would say you should look up to a guy like Brendan Gallagher.
Well, you're not going to get an argument from me. You're not going to get anything. Listen, we know that Brendan went through some challenging times, and we're not just talking about as a player. I mean, with his mother, and what she was going through, his personal life, what he was going through. And Brendan was a model of standing in there and understanding. Like I said, if the question is personal, if it's attacking, if it's not appropriate, okay, you can push back. But when they're fair and you understand, again, so Brendan had great self-awareness, or has great self-awareness. This is part of the maturation process, Tony. This is where Uri will grow. This is where he will mature and become more self-aware. But Brendan is a great example. And certainly I'm not trying to take anything away from Michael Matheson or David Savard. But those are all players that have come into the organization. Brendan's an original Canadian. And so for him alone, I remember Bob Gainey telling me, I asked him one time, when you came into the NHL, who did you look up to? He said, Yvan Cournoyer. He said, Yvan Cournoyer. Now they had Savard and all these other, he said, but Yvan Cournoyer every single day was committed to being the best player he could be. And even when he was hurt, even when he was injured, he still was he gave whatever he had of himself. But how he presented himself through those tough times, how he conveyed his thoughts, he said, to us as players, to the outside world, to the media, to the coaches, he goes, he was just tremendous. Now, I benefited from being around Bob Gainey because I've heard a lot of that. And so your point about Brendan Gallagher is the perfect answer. And people say, well, what about Nick Suzuki? Yeah, Nick Suzuki, but Nick is still young. Like, again, I keep going back to that great quote in the Montreal Canadiens dressing room. To you from failing hands, we throw the torch. Be yours to hold high. Be yours to hold high.
Yeah.
Who are the failing hands?
Yeah.
The Montreal Canadiens always had them.
You know what? It's I think we're basically saying that the Canadiens could use more experienced players
Yep.
to mentor the younger players and more real ones. Like we asked ourselves the question yesterday, myself and Chris Nyland and Max Lapierre, like who are the real ones? And Brendan Gallagher's name came up, but there's not too many others that came up. And I find that unfortunate because I find right now what's happening is not that they're losing, because you expect that from a rebuilding team. It's the way they're losing and the lack of fight. Like it almost seems like when they're down 2-0 or 3-0 or 4-0 or 4-1 or 5-1 or 6, like they don't want to do something early on in the game, and they wait for a couple of minutes left in the game when they're already losing by 4 or 5 or 6 to actually try and start to show, oh, you know what? I see, I'm not going to take losing lightly. Anyway, I think that's unfortunate. There's a lot of news coming out of practice today, all right? So why don't we get to it? Number one.
Can I just say one more thing?
Of course.
When you're playing the way the Montreal Canadiens are playing, like, quite frankly, the players better be sitting there ready to provide answers. That's the simply put. If I'm the manager there, you guys, you better not be snarky with the media. Again, if there's something that's offside, we'll pay attention. We'll make sure we address it. But when you play the way you did, you sit there and you answer to it. You remember last year when the Philadelphia Flyers got blown out of the arena by the Montreal Canadiens? You remember that?
Yeah.
Every single Philadelphia Flyers player was sitting there in their uniform ready to answer questions.
Yeah. And by the way,
because John Tortorella said, that's on you guys to answer.
Yeah.
And that's what needs to happen. So leadership here, whether it be from the manager or the coach, says, unacceptable, Uri. You don't give us snarky remark. You answer the question.
Yeah, and to Samuel Montembeault's credit, by the way, he was there waiting for members of the media when they got in yesterday after being pulled after 5 goals. Yeah. The Canadiens had new lines at practice today. They had a couple of players. They actually sent the player down. We're going to get to all of this in just a second, but not before we can bring up, we talked about their defensive play. We talked about some of their stats. Why don't we take a look at it? These stats are courtesy of Sport Logique, who do a fantastic job.
Yep.
And Craig, you have them in front of you. Would you like to talk about some stats that really catch your attention?
Well, okay, you don't even have to look at the stats. Just look at the defense metrics, okay? And look at everything in red. That means you're right near the bottom of the league. So what isn't in red, Tony? What isn't in red? It's awful. It's horrid. It's terrible.
Only one category is not in red or pink, and that's forecheck chances against.
Yeah.
Where they rank 17th in the National Hockey League. But let's put it this way: goals against, they're 28th out of 32. Expected goals against, they're 30th out of 32. Shot attempts, they're 30 out of 32. Shots on net, they're 27 out of 32. Slot shots, they're 30 out of 32. Inner slot shots, they're 31 out of 32. Slot passes, they're 27 out of 32. OZ possession time, offensive zone possession time, they're 31 out of 32. Rush chances, they're 31 out of 32. Cycle chances, they're 31 out of 32. Rebound chances, they're 27 out of 32. High danger chances, they're 30 out of 32. All these stats from a defensive standpoint, they are, in most of the, in all the categories, from the 6th worst team in the league to the 2nd worst team in the league.
You have no chance. Maybe no is the wrong word. Unless your goaltender stands right on his head with those defensive metrics, your chances of winning are almost zero. Almost zero. And until that improves, the chances of winning are not going to improve either. Simple as that.
And that's why I said early on in the show, I think if I had to choose between one or the other, I think it's more about the defensive zone coverage or lack thereof than it is on Samuel Montembeault, even though everyone knows that Montembeault lets in a couple of bad goals per game. But I just think when he lets them in, he's discouraged by that point, because I don't think he lets a bad goals early on in games for the most part. Okay, new lines of practice. Let's bring them up. Marc-Olivier Cook of Dans les Coulisses had Suzuki with Caulfield and Emil Heineman Brand new first line, but they're keeping Suzuki and Caulfield together, of course. Dach back at center with Slav on his left and Oliver Kapanen on his right. Dvorak with Armia and Newhook, and Evans with Gallagher and Anderson. So these were the lines at practice. We'll see if they'll be the lines during the game. So Marty St. Louis basically putting them all in a blender for the most part, with the exception of keeping the Evans, Gallagher, Anderson line together and keeping the duo of Suzuki and Caulfield together. On defense, Hudson, Savard. They stay together. Matheson with Barron, who's going to be making the trip to Washington after being concussed by Jacob Trouba. Barron was playing with Matheson at the time of the injury. And Gouli with Struble. Jacky and Mailloux. Mind you, the Canadiens announced earlier today regarding Mailloux that Mailloux has been loaned to the Laval Rocket. And they also announced regarding Barron and Gouli that they're going to travel with the team to Washington and Pittsburgh because, of course, their next two games are on the road, Thursday in Washington and Saturday in Pittsburgh. That would lead you to believe that based on the defense pairings today, that Arbor Jacky, it looks like he'll be a healthy scratch tomorrow if the Canadiens choose to go with 6 defensemen and 12 forward. All right, so there you have it. There's the news for the day for the Montreal Canadiens, and Marty St. Louis trying to create some kind of magic by mixing the players up in a blender.
Yeah, I mean, Logan, I think will benefit by going and playing lots of minutes in Laval. I still think that he's learning and growing, and that's the best. I think that's the best place for him. Justin Barron coming back in the lineup. He had played pretty steady until the injury, and certainly that's a welcome return, as is Jaden Struble back from his injury and being healthy, and Caden Gouli. So, trying to get some consistency in your group is something that coaches are always working on. Up front, it's interesting, and no guarantee that tomorrow that's what it'll look like. But again, going back to Tuesday after they fell behind and Marty trying to look at different ideas and trying to put players in different spots to see how they respond. I mean, that's what coaches do. So yeah. We'll see what ends up happening once the game starts. But here's what needs to happen is that, every player knows that the start time of the game is right up there. The Canadiens best be prepared to start the game when the puck drops. Because the case when they've fallen behind, it's been early, and it's been too big of a hole to climb out of. And now you're playing the last 50 minutes or 45 minutes of a game, kind of just trying to get to the end of it. That's no way to play. It's no way to grow as a group. It's no way to grow and get better in different areas of your team, because you're not getting competition here. The other team's just kind of rolling along, having some fun. And I think that's what happened with Seattle. It happened with the New York Rangers. So the Montreal Canadiens, want to improve their game. But don't let the opponent have fun playing the game against you. I think Chris Nyland and Maxime Lapierre would agree with you on that.
I'm sure they would. Craig, it's always not only a pleasure, but an honor. And you know that. I've told you that a million times. So president of the Craig Button Fan Club, I am. Thank you again for your time. We'll talk to you soon, my man.
Thanks, Tony.
You're very welcome. There you have it. Marinaro for Pau Montreal. I'm president of their fan club as well, because they have a game changer for hair loss. And I'm okay. As you can tell, I got a head full of hair right now. But it's called TED. It's an ultrasound technology to boost blood flow to your scalp, getting those hair follicles back in action. It's all natural. No needles, no pain. 98% success rate for ideal candidates. 2 locations, downtown Montreal and the West Island. And for a free consultation, you can call 514-989-7328 and give them a call tomorrow. Visit their website, www.paumontreal.com, P-E-A-U, Montreal.com. Special thanks for all of you once again for watching. The Canadiens obviously will be back in action tomorrow night when they visit the Washington Capitals. And so stay tuned for the Sick Podcast. Following the game, we'll be back on same time, same place, 10 p.m. Eastern. And you can watch us, of course, on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter as you're watching right now. Thanks. If you like the podcast tonight, leave us a 5-star review. It's our way of feeling the love. For Shane Gaumont, Sammy, and Yellow, all of them in Master Control. Sick Podcast, I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. Bittt, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.